You know what? Thank you for clicking. If you think I take your click for granted, maybe you don't know where I came from. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, came from the bottom, now we're here. I mean, career-wise, I definitely started at the bottom, but that's neither here nor there. It's great to have you with us. It's episode 12 of AnikDotes, which means we've been doing this thing for a year. It's AnikDotes presented by DraftKings, and we're excited because that means it's a pay-per-view week. As you can tell, or maybe not, I am still in Las Vegas. I'm at the old Residence Inn here on Dean Martin Drive, just off the Las Vegas Strip. I am headed for Singapore tomorrow, so I did not go back home after calling the fights last night. As we sit here, it is Sunday, June 5. And before we do dive into this pay-per-view, I'll set the table for you. We are going to look at the main card odds today at the end of main event mathematics. It's UFC 275, Teixeira versus Prochazka, 2 title fights. We'll also have a special guest as we get to your questions in Q&A. And I'll also let you know where my action is upcoming, in addition to all the tickets that I have ripped up since we last spoke, of which there are many. So we begin, as always, with main event mathematics. Main event for the UFC's undisputed light heavyweight championship. For a long time, this was the glamour belt in the UFC. More on that later in Q&A. But the light heavyweight title challenger here, Yuri Prochazka out of the Czech Republic, minus 195 right now on DraftKings Sportsbook. Glover Teixeira, the champion, in a familiar role, betting underdog. He is plus 165. So a lot of fight fans right now that I have seen on social media and otherwise are looking at propositions for this fight, either Glover Teixeira by submission or Yuri Prochazka by knockout. You can understand why. A lot of people seem to like the under in terms of the total number of rounds, even under 1.5 rounds, under 7.5 minutes. I think the fight sets up pretty well stylistically for a finish, but of course, mixed martial arts is the land of the unpredictable. So in theory, you never know, but I can understand why people would be prop hunting or prop shopping, I guess. The price on Prochazka by knockout, not available right now early in fight week on DraftKings Sportsbook. I'd imagine it'll be somewhere around minus 120. It'll certainly be closer to even money than the straight money line on the favorite Yuri Prochazka. But quick odds history on Glover Teixeira before we get to the main card odds. He has won 6 consecutive fights dating to January 19th of 2019. And incredibly, if you bet him in all 6 of those spots, the worst closing price you have gotten on Glover Teixeira over that 6-fight winning streak is minus 120, unless my research is really not good. And granted, I did do it this morning after calling fights all night, 14 of them. But minus 120, worst price on Glover. So he's been an underdog most of the time or close to even money. And let's look at some of those fights. Minus 110 against Carl Robertson. Like, can we put some respect on the Danbury, Connecticut product? Love you all Brazilians in Minas Gerais. Of course, we know where Glover came from. He submitted Carl Robertson with an arm triangle. Minus 120 against the Hulk Iwan Kutelaba. Can we put some respect on the name Glover Teixeira, folks? I mean, just a little bit. I mean, grab a paintbrush and paint some goddamn respect on the name Glover Teixeira. Submitted Iwan Kutelaba with a rear naked choke. And again, I'm not trying to decredential or denigrate these other athletes. He was minus 110 against Nikita Krylov. That was a win by split decision. Plus 195 against Anthony Smith. You all remember that. TKO due to strikes. Anthony Smith to the dentist. Plus 205 against Thiago Santos. He won that fight by rear naked choke. And plus 245 when he won the title against Jan Blachowicz. That was a rear naked choke in round 2. Not sure I need to say more. You know, I'm not sure if my producer Cody Merrow thinks we need more on that. But I guess the thesis statement on Glover Teixeira is that you're up money if you're betting this guy almost blindly. Now, I think anything can happen in this main event. That's why, candidly, even though it's not the best betting advice off the top of the show, I'd be probably looking at a Major League Baseball game or the NBA Finals or another fight on this 12-fight card at UFC 275. I just spent some time with Glover Teixeira in Connecticut. He is lean, he is mean, he is strong. He certainly looks a lot closer to 30 than I do. And he's ready to fight right now, and he was back then. You know, anything can happen in this fight. Yuri Prochazka is a monster. We'll get into more on him over the course of the show. But could I see Yuri Prochazka winning this fight by knockout inside of 2 minutes? Absolutely, unequivocally, yes. Could I see Glover Teixeira winning by submission early on? Absolutely. I did go back and watch some old Yuri Prochazka fights this morning. He's a totally different guy. You know, and even developmentally, it stands to reason, dating to his last UFC appearance, he's a totally different guy. So too many variables, too many things intangibly for me. Obviously, I'm contractually prevented as a UFC play-by-play announcer to bet on these fights. But I can tell you, to a man, to a woman, I'd be laying off this main event. All right, poll question. Who wins the main event and how do they get it done? So we solicited opinion from the masses. 62% of you like Yuri Prochazka by finish, not surprising. 28% of you like Glover Teixeira to get a finish, either knockout or submission. 6% of you like Glover Teixeira by decision. And 4% of you, ballsy lots you are, like Yuri Prochazka on points. All right, now we will get to the other main card odds at UFC 275. These are early on during fight week, so expect some changes. You can find these right now on the DraftKings Sportsbook application. At welterweight, Jack Della Maddalena, minus 135, taking on Ramazan Emeev, who is plus 115 here. Della Maddalena has won 11 in a row, and I do expect that will be the sharp side. Emeev, though, is the more UFC-tested party. Big fight at flyweight here. Manel Kape, minus 220. Rogerio Bontorin, plus 180. I think this fight is priced well for two-way action. I know some of my friends in the sharper space, I like to call myself a little bit of a square. They seem to think there's value on Bontorin at plus 180. I think there's value on both sides, honestly. I guess I think that it's properly priced. I think Manel Kape deserves to be north of a 2-1 favorite. Strawweight rematch. How good is this? Zhang Weili, minus 170. Joanna Jędrzejczyk, plus 150. So I guess I probably expect Joanna Jędrzejczyk to close closer to plus 140 or plus 135 as opposed to maybe it going the other way. But the first time they fought, my research suggests that money came in on Zhang Weili, who was the champion at the time, and she closed about minus 200. So we'll see where the action falls come June 11th there in Singapore. And then the co-main event for the women's flyweight title, Valentina Shepchenko, minus 720, Taila Santos, plus 500. So, you know, Shepchenko probably going to be tied to a lot of parlays from the betting public. Some that I talked to do like Taila Santos' chances. She certainly has some skills. And I guess we'll find out how it all plays out here in a few days. But that will do it for math class, thankfully. But as you can tell, UFC 275 is just absolutely loaded. And you can step into the octagon with DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC. Knockout, submission, or even a wayward judge's decision. No matter who wins or how the fight ends, new customers can bet $5 on UFC 275 and get $150 in free bets instantly. So many compelling matchups upon which to bet. That rematch between Zhang Weili and Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Who out there is taking a flyer on Taila Santos at plus 500? Be careful against the otherworldly Valentina Shevchenko. But if you are looking for a big cash for your buck, you can check out DraftKings Sportsbook's newest UFC feature, Same Game Parlays. You combine multiple bets, such as which fighter will win, number of knockouts, and more, for your shot at an even bigger payout. And right now, you can place a Same Game Parlay for Saturday's fights. And if it hits, you will double your winnings. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code ANIK. Throw down $5 on UFC 275 and get $150 in free bets instantly. That is code ANIK, ANIK, this Saturday at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. All right, now time for the meat of the show, the bulk of the show, the horse meat of the show. Q and Anik, hashtag anecdotes, as we get to your UFC 275 related questions. And we have got a special guest today. What do you got off the top? What do you got?
Well, I was just going to say, I was coming in here ready to rip you a little bit, but you got me all fired up here. Well done.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's a pay-per-view week. I'm excited. You know, thankful to have the June 4th show in the can, and it's good to have you with us. So what do they call you, Boston Anik, or is it Jason Anik? I mean, the handle's Boston Anik on social media. If you don't know, this is my identical twin brother. He hosts a podcast with UFC welterweight contender Bilal Muhammad on the Anik and Florian podcast YouTube channel, and we're happy to have you gracing us today with your presence for Q and Anik. Is that a Boston Celtics logo behind you?
It is.
Yeah, all right.
1960 championship team. Well, I think it's appropriate for me to be on today with the Prochazka. I should have, tied the hair up a little bit. You got Glover Teixeira's look, so we're ready to go.
That would have been great if you could have somehow braided your hair. But see, Yuri Prochazka's hair thing is like hard as a rock, and I don't know how you would do that,
Don't even get me started on that.
All right. Q and Anik, we solicited these questions from our great UFC fans. I can't thank you guys enough for your participation. Hashtag anecdotes for consideration for future episodes. But what do you have for us today, Jim?
We'll start it off. I like the Twitter handle already, at D's Corn Nuts. How'd you know Drago has huge pet rabbits?
Oh, you got to love it, right? So I was talking to his wrestling coach, Kenny Johnson from Black House MMA, before the fight, and I said to him candidly, and this is certainly new to this audience. I said, hey, man, like when I asked Volkov about his two sons, like he kind of like stonewalled me, man. He didn't have much for me. He's like, really? Because like the two things he likes to talk about are his sons and like his rabbits. He has like these pet rabbits and like they're huge. And he's like, so maybe you can work that in there. And obviously I couldn't work it in there because the fight was pretty quick, but at the back end of the fight, we were able to do so. So funny to see some of the Lenny of Mice and Men references, thinking about Alexander Volkov with a little pet rabbit. But hey, man, I mean, that's where the research took us last week.
Yeah, well, you got the flashcards, found a way to work it in. Attaboy. So moving on, at Thalyal, we know who the number 1 all-time light heavyweight is. What will it take to be a declarative number 2 all-time in the division?
All right, thanks to you and our producer, Cody Merrow, I did get this question in advance, so I got to look up the light heavyweight history as far as the belt's history in the UFC. And thank you for the question, Thalyal. So yes, John Jones is the consensus greatest light heavyweight of all time. I think for a lot of people, he's the greatest mixed martial arts athlete that they have ever seen. Some of the names, Randy Couture, the Iceman Chuck Liddell is not from the modern era per se, but he's in this conversation for me with 4 light heavyweight title defenses. It's not Rampage Jackson, nor is it Forrest Griffin or Rashad Evans or Lyoto Machida or Shogun Rua. It's not Jan Blachowicz. With respect, it's not Glover Teixeira yet. Daniel Cormier had 3 title defenses. Now, I'm not the most objective party, but I would say right now, if you're looking for a declarative number 2 all time at 205 pounds, the soon-to-be inducted UFC Hall of Famer, Daniel Cormier.
I like it. Moving on, at Evan K900, with only 2 UFC fights under his belt, have you noticed any weaknesses in Yuri, and can Glover expose any weakness?
All right, so I'm not a mixed martial artist, right? I mean, sometimes I do get analytical. I did go back and watch some Yuri Prochazka footage today, as I mentioned. I watched his lone submission loss in 2013. First of all, you can throw it out the window. But second of all, he didn't tap, right? I mean, he went out cold, so he is not a guy who figures to tap maybe in this equation. If he wasn't willing to tap in 2013 when he was greener than the cannabis in Southern Nevada, then I don't think he's going to tap in 2022. And developmentally, I just think he's gotten so much better. And how much of this training camp was rooted in grappling defense? But if you're asking me for a glaring weakness, I think it is maybe not glaring, and you didn't even use the words glaring, Evan. But I would say it's his takedown defense, and I do think that Glover Teixeira has a good chance to take him down and do so early on in the fight.
At Archer MMA, since this is Singapore, how do you think this will affect the fighters' performances? Example, jet lag, the fight started 6 a.m. over there. And then similarly, Celtic MMA, the handle's at Celts 1967, 1988, says, wonder if it will affect people like Joanna, who came early to acclimate. She'll be used to the conditions. She'll be used to the conditions, but she'll be on Singapore time.
What about the broadcasters, Archer, huh? No, I'm just kidding. So Valentina Shepchenko seemed to be the first upon arrival, which is not at all surprising as she tries to get an upper hand on her contemporaries every chance she gets. So we did get backed up a half an hour. I can tell you, I just got my UFC 275 fight schedule. First fight is at 6:30 a.m. local time. But I can just tell you, as far as Joanna Jędrzejczyk is concerned, her head coach, Mike Brown, has been through this, right, in Abu Dhabi and all over the world. These big teams and a lot of these athletes who are not first-timers sort of know how to get their body in a position to perform. And certainly we're not in the excuse space, right, in professional fighting, right? So you got to figure out a way, whether you're a commentator or a fighter, right? I say that somewhat tongue in cheek, right? But I'll be on a treadmill at 3 a.m. to make sure that I'm in a pretty good spot for that. But I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue for Joanna Jędrzejczyk. I do think that it's interesting that the weigh-in is on Friday night. We have one weigh-in, the official and the ceremonial is one weigh-in, and the fighters in theory will have extra hours at 36, hours or so, right? Have that entire Saturday because the show is early Sunday morning in Singapore. So I think it stands to reason that most of these athletes will perform optimally, including the returning Joanna Jędrzejczyk.
I like this next one. At MMA Newt's Picks, Taila Santos has shown promise in her relatively short UFC career, but she hasn't really been able to put opponents away besides Joanne Wood. Is her most likely path to victory a decision win over Valentina?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and thank you for the submission as I look for Taila Santos's biography here. So she could not get Roxanne Modafferi out of there last year. So, again, MMA math doesn't always compute, but 2 fights ago at UFC 266, she went 3 rounds with Roxanne Modafferi, and for all of Roxy's strength and conditioning and durability, I don't think a fight between Modafferi and Valentina Shevchenko is particularly competitive. So historically, 10 wins by knockout, 3 by submission for the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt Taila Santos. She has some power. She has a really good Muay Thai game. And I think a lot of it is about location, right? If she can find the perfect location on the chin or the jaw of Valentina Shepchenko with a kick or a well-placed uppercut or left hook and maybe get Shepchenko out of there, it's possible. But I don't know. Outpointing Valentina over 25 minutes sounds awfully daunting as well. So, I mean, can I bail on that question? Can we just move?
Well, the reason I liked it is just to see Valentina at this shorter price. I mean, I've seen her as such a heavier favorite before. So I like the question because it seems as though there's a path somewhere.
Yeah, and the last time I think people were this excited about a flyweight title challenger, it was Jessica Andrade, and we all saw how that went.
There you go. Well, at It's Me, Mikey, R09, when are judges and refs going to be held accountable for terrible calls?
Yeah, man. So I think the state of mixed martial arts refereeing is really, really good. Our elite referees are quite good, but they all handle commonplace situations differently. And I have a big issue with that. I do think by and large, the refs are accountable, even though the referees are not jumping to go on podcasts and explain themselves. Some of them certainly do that. But when it comes to a clinch situation, even last night at UFC Fight Night Volkov versus Rosenstrike, there were a lot of clinch situations. And if Chris Tognoni was the referee in those instances, the warnings would have been more stern and the separations would have been more omnipresent, right? Yep. So I'm looking for a little bit more consistency from the referees. As far as the judges are concerned, I've defended a lot of these guys. Some of these guys are my friends. But yeah, man, like I continue to scratch my head. We got 30-27, Jeff Molina. He's walking off because he's like, well, I didn't win 3 rounds,
Right.
Somehow one of the judges did. He took a piss during one of them. But no, I don't know, man. I don't know what the answer is. For me, I'm not even looking for the accountability as much as I'm looking for the improved performance. It's like I don't need a guy to get on a podium and say he's sorry. I need him to watch the fight.
At Degenerate U says, how was manning the booth with just Paulie last night? Do you prefer a 2-man or 3-man booth?
It's an interesting question. Pay-per-views are just a monster for me, as you know as well as anyone, Jay. And, I do think and have said many times that when Joe Rogan is in the broadcast booth, there is a special dynamic to that broadcast booth. It just feels like an enormous show, and not just because he's an A-list celebrity, because of his space and the way he occupies this space and has for so long in the UFC. But I do think, by and large, that a 2-man booth works better for mixed martial arts. It is such a fast-moving sport. I can't tell you how many times in a given round both fighters land simultaneously, and it just becomes very difficult to either retrace your steps to mention a strike when you have 3 guys, or, I don't know, provide the proper narrative. So I do enjoy the extra real estate, and I do think that mixed martial arts works better with a 2-man booth, but I can tell you that my preference doesn't matter, and it's going to be mostly 3-man booth from here on out. So
you can be sure. At JK 1880 4355, whose name is the most awkward to pronounce during fights?
And of course, I enjoy hanging out with my boy Paul Felder, and really enjoyed the show with that guy. So shout out to Paul Felder as well. So practice, man. Like, to quote the great Allen Iverson, we're talking about practice. That's really all that matters, right? I do have a few awkward names that I'm going to share here, and they're all like 5 syllables. And that's the tough thing, right? So when Zabit Magomed Sharipov strikes, oh, nice jab from Zabit. But we're really not supposed to call these fighters by their first name. Oh, nice jab from Josh. Nice jab, Josh, But really nice jab from Zabit seems to work, right? But, just that pinpoint jab from Magomed Sharipov, Nikolai Negumerianu, or Guram Kutataladze, right? Kutataladze is a little bit of a tricky one. But, JK, it's all about practice. I hate to say it, shout out to my man Bruce Buffer if he's listening, right? Who practices into the deep hours of the night, I am sure. You got to practice. And in theory, for me, I say, Nikolai Negumerianu 50 times before I get to the arena. So it's not that hard. But 5 syllables is true.
Well, with respect, this is a better question for the analysts, not you, because a lot of them could answer this easily.
And by the way, Buffer doesn't practice, if we're really trying to be transparent.
At Courtney MMA, do you think if Alex Pereira wins definitively against Sean Strickland that he should get the storybook title shot, considering how the middleweight division has been cleared out?
All right, so if you don't know the context of that question, Alex Pereira had 2 kickboxing wins against Israel Adesanya inside of 11 months, the last of which came by knockout. Now, fighters get knocked out in kickboxing, right? Alex Pereira got knocked out himself going into that Adesanya rematch. But yeah, I mean, I think if he beats 4th-ranked Sean Strickland, who, by the way, if he beats Alex Pereira, in theory, would be next for the winner of Israel Adesanya and Jared Cannonier, we're going to get clarity at middleweight. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that the division has been cleared out because we have Cannonier and Strickland as we sit here right now. I mean, this question seems to presume that Israel Adesanya is going to get through Jared Cannonier, but these fights are happening on that same night. The fight with Alex Pereira and Sean Strickland was going to be July 30th. Now it's July 2nd, same night. So yeah, I do believe if Alex Pereira wins and does so decisively against Sean Strickland, that they are foundationally building towards a mixed martial arts championship contest between Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya. And knowing Izzy to be the competitor that I know him to be, I think he'll be happy to sign on the dotted line and exact some revenge.
You got time for one more?
Yeah, what do you got?
Final one.
Yeah.
At Dream Wonder Copy. Which fighter at UFC 275 has the best nickname?
All right, so we got a handful of athletes that do not have nicknames who are competing at UFC 275. So, a couple good ones. I think Storm Dana Batgeri, because it's like the Mongolian Storm is kind of good. I mean, the Celtic Kid for Jake Matthews is always a good one. Jacob Malkoun is a big Kobe guy, and his nickname is Mamba, So for me, I mean, that's probably going to be my choice with all of these athletes, putting Kobe Bryant on the pedestal that he deserves to be on. Magnum Jean Wei Li is good. Manel Kopp, Starboy, I like. Bullet for Valentina Shepchenko is good. But for me, out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, I believe, Steve Garcia, nickname Mean Machine. Mean Machine. So I'll go Mean Machine or Mamba as the best nickname at UFC 275. What do you think?
I like it. Well done.
All right. At Boston Anik on social media. Jay, thanks for joining us for Q and Anik today. All right, time now for Rip Up Your Tickets as I share with the masses those tickets that I will not be taking to the window. You ever take a ticket to the window and just hope that somehow it slides through the machine and it's a payout? No, me neither. All right, Miami Heat to win the Eastern Conference. So I had 3 tickets on that. My best ticket was plus 460, 200 to win 920, or as my brother would say, 200 to win 0. So we ripped all of those up. Also had $50 on the Heat to win the title, but as a Celtics fan, certainly more than happy to rip up those tickets. I ripped up 2 tickets on the Florida Panthers to win the Eastern Conference and the Stanley Cup. That was minus $80. I also, as many of you know, if you watch AnikDotes over the last year, know that I bet on most every golf tournament with the hopes of whacking like 3 or 4 of them per year. Come on, Billy Horschel, getting all up in my space at the Memorial. 0 for 3 on my last tournaments, and I usually bet $100 per tournament that spread out over a few golfers. So minus 300 there. If my wife's watching, I've been cleaning up on Major League Baseball, honey, so don't worry about it. Future action. Anik's action moving forward. Colorado Avalanche to win the Western Conference. This was a good bet. Placed on May 10th at minus 115. 230 to pay $200. That's pretty good. And actually, by the time you're watching this episode of AnikDotes, that might have already hit. Also, that same day, May 10th, 2022, I did place a small bet on the Avalanche to win the Stanley Cup at plus 210. 20 to pay 42. Hey, come on. May 3rd, I bet on the New York Rangers to win the Stanley Cup. Plus 1,400. And on April 21st, I placed a $200 bet on the Golden State Warriors to win the NBA championship, plus 335. 200 would pay out at $670. And that's about it. I did bet on the Yankees to win the American League pennant. Chalky play at plus 245, but I do think they will be in the championship series. And again, I like to sort of find a team in most sports, certainly in the NFL, and certainly in Major League Baseball, that I believe will be in the Final Four, and bet on them to not win the title, but to win the pennant or to win their conference. All right, we got to get on out of here. Thanks for indulging us for the UFC 275 edition of AnikDotes presented by DraftKings. It all goes down Saturday night live on pay-per-view from Singapore, and very much look forward to talking to you all from there after I get this travel on the metal tube out of the way. We will have more coverage throughout the week on my social channels. Be tuned in for that. That is Jon_Anik. Also at DraftKings, and for the DraftKings Sportsbook at DK Sportsbook on Twitter, and on Instagram, it is at DraftKings_Sportsbook. We wish you all the best in the sportsbook and beyond. For our producer, Cody Merrow, and my twin bro, Jason Anik. Jon Anik saying so long from Las Vegas, Nevada, USA. Wheels up to Singapore for UFC 275. We will talk to you from there. Until then, don't text and drive. Yo, later.